My name is Colleen, and I am here today on behalf of PAWPAW Parents, PAC, Parents of Apprehended Children, and Abusive Ministry. Alvin is with me today videotaping this conversation, and if anyone would like to post our video on their website, please feel free. You have our permission if you agree with our views and want to help raise public awareness on the issue of child protection in Canada and the U.S. Today I am speaking with a mother who has dealt with child services in 2 Canadian provinces. The main point that I would like to make is that social workers use the same tactics with this mother, an active member of the community and a public servant for 23 years, as they would with every other parent. The unusual aspect of this case is that this mother knew her rights and the law. Having been an RCMP member for 23 years, did not convince social workers to abide by their own regulations or standards because they answer to no one. They investigate their own complaints and they make up their own decisions. Some of the main things that we would like to focus on today are that, obviously, like I just said, child services investigates itself. Social workers decide what information will be submitted to court and what won't. Social workers can override any section of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act as they wish. And hearsay evidence or no evidence at all can be submitted to the courts. And her 13-year-old son was apprehended by Child Protection Services in Saskatchewan?
Yes.
What was your first involvement with any Child Protection Services, and where were you living?
It was in British Columbia when we lived in the province. My pediatrician had requested respite because there had been behavioral issues, severe behavioral issues come up with my son at school and at home. Very risky behaviors that were dangerous.
How old was he?
He was approximately 5-6 years old at the time.
Okay.
And my pediatrician had sent a fax to the Ministry of Child and Family Services requesting respite for me because it was just me raising him, and my parents were helping, and we were all really exhausted because he was very, very high needs.
And that was in 2002?
That was in 2002. And the day that they received the fax, I was called and said that there was an issue of protection because a neighbor had said that I had swore at my son, and I didn't know what they were talking about, and I went down and saw them right away. And when the worker told me that, well, we had a report, your neighbor said that you'd swore at your son, and I said, well, even if I had, that would have been just poor judgment. It's really not a protection issue. And they said, but we also got a letter from your pediatrician saying that your son has very challenging behaviors and you need help. And they said to me, what do you do when you get so frustrated with him because of his behavioral issues? Like, you must get to the end of your rope. And I said, yeah, it's difficult. And she said, what do you do when you get to the end of the rope? And I did say to her, I tie a knot and hang on. And so after I explained to her that he was, I was able to fight to get him into a facility on Vancouver Island to be assessed for possible ADHD and oppositional defiance. I was able to get him in there, and he was in an in-treatment 7-week program where he was assessed from day to night so that we could find out why he had such risky behaviors.
Can you explain a little bit about those behaviors that you were dealing with?
Yes. He was fighting all the time at school. He would run away from school. We couldn't find him. We had search and rescue looking for him one day. He would take off from home on his bicycle, and the whole family would be out looking for him, and sometimes we called the police to help us. He'd disappear from school. Nobody'd know where he was. He started jumping out of the back of the car when I was driving down the highway. He'd try to open the door. He'd attempted suicide, which was really frightening for us. It was devastating. He jumped off a second floor balcony one day, and we had to call the ambulance. So it was a lot of stuff that he was very, very impulsive when he got angry, and I was so terrified he was going to hurt himself.
So that's why you asked for some respite care?
Yes, because it was exhausting.
So, and how was that affecting your, like, I mean, how was his, before you asked for the respite care, how was his behavior affecting your daily life and your ability to work?
I was depressing. I mean, I think if I hadn't had my family there, I don't know what would have happened. I probably would have given up, but I had really good family support. Our GP was very supportive and understood everything. It affected my work. I had to constantly leave work to go get him from school.
And you have a very stressful job?
Yeah, the job was stressful. You have to be on the ball, and you have to have your mind on the game. You can't be drifting off back home or to your kids a lot of times. And I was fortunate that I worked in a place and worked for an organization that was really compassionate to family issues. And when I did have to leave, they were very understanding. But it was almost a daily routine of me leaving to go get him because of really risky behaviors at school.
And what were you hoping to get out of asking for respite care? What were you hoping would happen?
I was hoping to get a weekend so that I could sleep and get
yourself
up, get my strength back up and get going again with him. I never gave up on him. None of us did.
Okay, so after that, and so he was in he did end up in respite care?
At one point, yes. I spoke to our family doctor, and my family and I had a meeting, and we were really exhausted. We had all been taking turns taking care of him to give each other a rest, and it just came to the point that we all needed respite. We all needed downtime to get ready to come back and do it again.
So how long was he in respite care?
He was in for 1 month.
Did you ever put him in respite? Then that was in 2003, 2004?
Yes, around that time.
So after that, from 2003 until your next involvement with the ministry, did you ever put him in respite care again?
I think he went in a couple days just to give us, when he started escalating again, I think we put him in twice for a day each time, or a day and a half, something like that. No long term.
Okay, so after that, when was the next time that you were faced with an interaction with social workers from a child protection agency, and where were you?
It was in Regina, Saskatchewan. I had moved there for my job. I had gotten a phone call from my son's school that he was being suspended for throwing a chair at another child, and they said he had to go home.
And what year was this?
This was 2008.
Okay.
So I went to the school, got him, took him home, and during his 3-day suspension, I had decided prior to that that he was going to go to a private school where it was more structured and disciplined, because I wanted him to succeed and get an education, and he wasn't getting that in the public school. So I brought him home the day of his suspension, and a couple nights later I was checking my visa bill and found out that somebody had spent over $700 on my credit card on iTunes. And when I asked him, he denied it. And so reluctantly I called the police. There had to be accountability for his actions, and I did. And the police came and arrested him for fraud. Broke my heart to have to do it.
How old was he then?
He was 12.
Okay.
And he'd had involvement with the law before, and I had told him, you have to be accountable for your actions. And that's all I was trying to do, is be a responsible parent and show him that if you break the law, there's consequences to it. And the police were very supportive, and they were going to take him to cells for one night, and he'd be in court the next day, and I said I'd be there to pick him up. And it was a lesson in tough love, and it was just as tough for me as it was for him. And next thing I knew, a social worker was calling me. And I was told I couldn't see or speak to my child until she could see me. And I asked her what was going on, and she told me she was investigating, and I said, well, he's already been charged.
So the social worker told you that you could not see or speak to your son, and from what your son has told you, what were they telling him at that time?